30 years, the Mana series has been regarded as a genre-defining landmark in action RPG history. From its 8-bit foray onto monochrome handheld screens to its remakes of the beloved classics, this series has proven to be a mainstay in every RPG aficionado's collection. And now, for the first time in over 15 years, the series is finally getting a new mainline entry, Visions of Mana. Whether this is your first time brawling with Rabites in the starting area, or you've swung the Mana Sword a time or two, Visions of Mana is the perfect place for newcomers and veterans alike to jump into the world of Koichi Ishii and team.
Now that does sound like a fairy tale.
Presented by Visions of Mana. If this is your first time jumping into a Mana game, Visions of Mana is a great one to start off with. The game was built from the ground up to be a self-contained experience. With its fresh setting and brand new characters, the standalone story makes it accessible to everyone. Its gameplay and combat system have been refreshed with modern sensibilities, making it easier than ever to learn how to play. No matter if you haven't played any of the games or if you've been playing since the very first game, Final Fantasy Adventure on the Game Boy. If you've ever played a JRPG or action RPG before, you'll be right at home with its various RPG trappings. But if not, mechanically, Visions of Mana is super beginner friendly and easy to pick up. The game does an excellent job of being accessible by unraveling its simple, yet deep RPG systems over time. Feeling confused or forgetful? Check the handbook menu, which allows you to reread tutorials or brush up on mechanics you may have forgotten about. Lost or not sure where to go next? The star marker can be found on your minimap and indicates your next objective. You can even pull up the shortcut menu and have the game visually guide you with a path of light you can follow. This is without a doubt the most accommodating Mana game to start off with, and a great return to form for players who've ever thought about getting back into the series again.
You must be off to the Mana Tree to create a new age for us all.
So what is Visions of Mana about? Its story revolves around Val and Hina, two close childhood friends. As per tradition, an Alm is appointed every 4 years, and they're tasked with offering their soul to the Mana Tree to restore its power.
I was appointed the Alm of the Moon upon visiting Aeterne.
Hina is appointed as the Alm of Fire, which sets her on a journey to the Mana Tree. Val, our protagonist, is chosen as their soul guard, the person in charge of making sure they get to the Mana Tree safely. Along the way, Val and Hina come across other compelling characters like Karina, Morley, Palomina, and Jule, who accompany them on their journey. Visions of Mana boasts a lush poppy world filled with rich tapestries of color. Blossom petals dance in the open air, wind flows through flourishing grass and vegetation, sun-setting clouds reflect back at you in the water, and massive structures loom in the distance of vast landscapes. Visions of Mana drips an enchanting style that's packed into every detail. It's obvious there's been a lot of attention and care put into adapting the series' established visual identity into a modern-day style.
Like waking up from hibernation after a long, cold winter.
As you navigate Val and party's cross-country expedition on your trusty Picools, you'll rarely experience loading screens as you explore. Unburdened by transitions, Visions of Mana lets go of the wheel and allows you to go wherever you want. The environments are varied and present you with numerous branching paths you can explore on your own. Its topography is anything but flat, so you can venture to the top of hills, down into gorgeous valleys, or find hidden paths that were initially obscured from view. Traversing your way through the diverse terrain, you'll be using your generous double jump and air dashes quite frequently, making it possible to scale rooftops and platform your way through obstacles. Fortunately, both you and your Picool have been blessed with mad hops, and players can even air dash multiple times for long-distance maneuverability.
Look at it jump!
A lot of content in Visions of Mana is completely optional. Sure, you can go straight on ahead to the main quest if you'd like, but if you so choose, you can take your time to do side quests that you'll discover from around the map. There's also optional stronger monsters known as Nemesis, which will reward you a great deal for being able to defeat one. They act as a sort of mini-boss that you can test your combat skills on if you think you're up to the challenge. Littered throughout the landscape are many enemies to fight, grizzly syrups to collect, and pots to smash. Tucked away in the nooks off the beaten path are treasure chests you can collect to find all sorts of goodies.
This might be useful.
And how could it be a Mana game without all the classic critters that are scattered throughout the world? Seeing modernized versions of mole bears, Chobin hoods, Lullabuds, shell blasts, Sahagins, and of course Rabites is a truly delightful surprise.
Is it just me, or is this area teeming with monsters?
The nostalgic nods steeped in series tradition will excite returning fans, but also introduces a whole new generation to the iconic creatures that some have spent over 30 years fighting. One of the main focuses of Visions of Mana is its combat, which is what you'll spend a good amount of time doing. Back when Final Fantasy Adventure and Secret of Mana were first introduced to the RPG landscape of the time, they were revolutionary in their approach of giving players the freedom of real-time movement and attacks. All these years later, Visions of Mana is still doing just that, but with so much more. It picks back up where the series left off and makes its combat system more accessible, deep, and newcomer-friendly than ever before by making the combat easy to pick up, yet challenging to master. Enemies are normally spread around the map in clusters. You can choose to fight them or run around if you wish to disengage or not engage at all. During combat, you can sprint around, jump, ground dash, air dash, cast magic, use items, and swing your weapons at any time. When you swing your weapon, you have the choice of doing physical damage in the form of a slash or a strike, which is essentially light and heavy attacks. Along with this are attacks, magic, and abilities that are imbued with elemental damage, which come in 8 different types. These play a huge role in how much damage you'll be doing based on the kind of enemy you're fighting, and when all are combined correctly, you'll be taking out monsters left and right. The ring menu system that was created and popularized by Secret of Mana is also back. You can use this to pause combat to plan your next move, such as casting your spells or using your items mid-fight at any time. For those who prefer a more intuitive and fast-paced experience, shortcuts are another way to instantly execute moves or access items. There's a few more things to combat you'll have to discover for yourself, but one of the coolest things is using your class strike ability with the tap of a button to do an ultimate attack. Your party consists of 3 characters and you can swap between them at any time. They all handle completely differently from one another. Not only that, but they can be whatever class you want thanks to the elemental vessels, which we'll dive more into in a second. Different classes mean a different moveset, and there's 9 total if you include the base class you start out as. Sure, you can play the same fighting style and class the whole way through if you want, no problem, but at any time you have the choice to swap abilities, change classes, and build out completely different movesets once you've unlocked them. You can tailor the experience of the game to fit your exact playstyle if that's your thing. That doesn't mean it'll be the strongest or the most optimal way of playing, but hey, it's your choice to make. Enemies are weak, resistant, or immune to certain types of attacks. Trying to figure out which abilities or magic you should be using to find that weakness is an ever-changing puzzle to solve. Like during this boss fight against the Kraken, where I imbued my sword with fire and it began to chunk his health bar. Typically, changing abilities and classes and trying out new moves will help make quick work of any baddie that dares to stand in your way. But we can't really speak a whole lot about classes without first checking out one of Visions of Mana's biggest features. As you progress through the game, you'll meet 8 elementals and unlock 8 elemental vessels, which grant new abilities to party members in combat and traversal. If they look familiar, it's because they probably are. Sylphid, Luna, Undine, Gnome, Dryad, Lumina, Shade, and Salamando all make return to Visions of Mana. Sylphid for Elemental of Wind, Luna, Elemental of the Moon, and so on. Elemental vessels are mystical artifacts that house the power of the elements within them. Once unlocked, you'll be able to equip any one of these to your party members. By doing so, you'll be able to select an elemental vessel to swap classes at any time on any character. By spending elemental points that you'll receive by leveling up your party and such, you'll unlock unique abilities and stat buffs that your characters can then utilize. Take Sylphid for example. When you're out and about and exploring, the Wind Elemental will grant you the ability to access updrafts when you see the elemental trigger floating out in the open. Walk up to it and you'll create a windy trampoline that will hurl you up to a large structure, such as this mountain. And up top, that sweet, sweet loot is yours for the taking. When equipped with their elemental vessel, it can be used as a means of attack mid-battle for big damage and debuffs on enemies. Another example is with Luna's elemental vessel of the Moon, which allows you to slow down time.
Everything's slowed down.
In battle, it does exactly as you'd expect to great effect. You can create pockets of moon energy, and if they cross into the enemies, they'll go into slow motion for a bit, giving you a leg up for a short duration. You can get a bunch of free attacks in and dish out some serious damage before the bubble goes away. In addition, Luna has a secondary ability which decreases cast times on your spells and abilities when you or your party members stand inside it.
Looks like the vessel had an effect.
Outside of combat, Luna's elemental vessel can be used much like Sylphid's, where if you see an elemental trigger floating around nearby, you can activate it. This slows down time as well and will be applied to an object or thing in the area, like how it slowed down this river stream to make platforming a little more manageable. Just like the other games in the series, you'll find these elementals over time as the story of the game unfolds. Meet them to unlock their elemental vessels, to experiment with, and find out what works best for you. Or what works on those nemesis that have been giving you the hands for some time. For longtime fans of the series, there are plenty of nostalgic nods and juicy lore tidbits shared between Visions of Mana and the rest of the series, like the Mana Tree, Mana Sword, and numerous iconic characters. It's a series tradition to bridge the gap between each game with shared elements. In this case, one of them is Lil Cactus from Legend of Mana. This little guy makes his return to Visions of Mana and can be found throughout the game, much like in the Trials of Mana remake. This time, he's making his grand journey across the world. Whenever you spot a little cactus in the wild, make sure to help him out, and he'll do so in return.
Did that plant thing drop something back there?
Wondering what all that grizzly syrup sprinkled throughout was for? That's for Dudbear, who is also from Legend of Mana. Dudbear makes his return to the series and is looking for as much grizzly syrup as he can get his paws on.
Babu, ba-doo-doo-bub.
The more you collect, the more you can turn in for some awesome rewards like Cups of Wishes and Serums, which permanently increase a character's stat. These come in limited quantities, so make sure to grab them all when you can. And whatever you do, this is very important not to miss, it's one of the most important features in the game, exhaust every dialogue option in the Dudbear dictionary. Trust me.
Do-ba-ba-ba.
The list goes on and on. The game is packed to the brim with series references, homages, and fan service, so if you're a Mana superfan, prepare to be blown away when you come across other recurring characters like Niccolo, Vuskav, Flammy, and how could we forget about the legendary dancing merchants that have been in just about every Mana game. Or hey, if you're a newcomer with no nostalgia whatsoever for any of this stuff, prepare to fall in love just like we did all those years ago. These are just a few things you can look forward to when you make your own journey to the Mana Tree. The proverbial Rabite hole undoubtedly goes much deeper, but you'll have to discover those things for yourself by checking out Visions of Mana, which you can play right now on PlayStation 4 and 5, Xbox Series consoles, and PC. And for more on all things Visions of Mana, stay tuned to IGN.